Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Endgames series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we are going to be taking a look at a very interesting endgame played between Leela-Stockfish and Stockfish at the TCEC Season 24 Super Final. I was whizzing through all the games that have been played in the TCC Super Final, and I came across this one. And actually, there's a moment at the end of the game that first attracted me. That was quite an interesting point where Stockfish shoves forward the f-pawn in order to open up the king and create some counterplay. That seemed quite amazing to me. But actually, as I analysed it further and further, one aspect of it really interested me a lot, and that aspect was the pieces that black could exchange at various moments. Could black exchange the rooks? Could black exchange the queen? What were the resulting endgames like? And well, I mean, simply analysing it lots and playing lots of engine matches, yeah, I really learned some amazing things. So I really wanted to share it with you. Have to warn you, I think you'll probably need to watch the whole video because there are quite a few plot twists. But let's start by seeing just how the game proceeded and how Stockfish went about defending this position. So white is a pawn up, a potential extra pass pawn on the queen side. You can create it with a3, b4, for example. And yeah, just major pieces. You know, in general, you know, if you've just got the rooks on the board, then well, often, you know, a rook ending a pawn down, reasonable chances of a draw. Even queen endings a pawn down, you know, can often lead to a draw as well. So, you know, it's not, it's certainly not a clear win for white, this position, but in principle it is quite unpleasant for black to defend. So Stockfish played queen d7, and I think this is the first very important thing to take from this game. It's Stockfish's defensive setup. Just lines up the queen behind the rook to control one of the open files in the position. The d file in this case gives black the opportunity to invade to the 7th or 8th, and also the opportunity to harass the white queen on pretty much any rank it tries to settle. So yeah, it's providing counterplay possibly, and it's also disruptive. You know, if the white queen thinks, I've got a great spot on the 3rd rank, the rook can just chase it away and force the queen to find something else. So Leela played queen e4, queen d8 played from Stockfish, and this is quite a nice setup. You know, the queen behind the rook, as we said, supporting it in its endeavours to either create counterplay or harass the white queen, and it's also defending the a5 pawn if white should ever try and attack it. So king g2, rook d5, queen f3, and rook d3, and here we are, we're harassing the white queen. The white queen was quite pleased with its position on f3. It was hitting the pawn on f7, but instead of defending it, we can just keep hitting the queen. Queen b7, rook d7. And you know, what's the value of that? The value of that simply is that, you know, if we're attacking the queen, if we're harassing the white queen, then white isn't getting any chance to build something on top of it. White's always got to react to a threat. So queen c6, rook d2, rook a4, and rook d1. And you know, this is quite important. Black isn't just trying to doggedly defend this pawn on a5. Black's actually looking for counterplay. If white goes too much for the pawn on a5 with the queen and rook, then we're going to get some counterplay on the 8th rank, for example. So rook e4 was played, queen d3, just stepping out of the threat of rook e8 check and the threatening queen to f1 check. Queen e8 check, king g7, and rook e1. And this is, I guess, a second crucial moment here. Black has to decide whether to swap off the rooks or not. Well, as you'll see throughout the game, Stockfish was pretty careful about not exchanging the rooks and kept the rook on d2 for counterplay. Actually, Stockfish is so keen not to swap off the rooks that it's even willing to give up this pawn on a5 for it. So white is now 2 pawns up. But well, what Stockfish has calculated, queen d4, rook f1, rook b2. and just calculated that the black pieces are so active that white is not going to be able to keep both of these pawns. We've got the queen on d4 and the rook on b2, attacking the pawn on f2, keeping this rook on f1 passive, and of course, you know, these pawns are very hard to move. I mean, it's pretty likely that that white's going to have to give up one of those pawns in order to get the pieces free. So yeah, you know, these sort of transformations are quite important, really. I mean, we've moved from being a pawn down to being 2 pawns down, but masses of activity for black, and then we're going to switch afterwards to you know, probably to a pawn up and less activity for black. It's what makes endgames quite difficult to play in a practical game, you know, with limited time, because the contexts and the you know, they keep on shifting all the time, and you know, according to the context, you need to do slightly different things, and well, you know, you really need to have a good flexible mind to especially to defend these properly. So queen a6 played, queen d7, just Stockfish just waiting. Queen f6 now, rook a2 and rook e1, and well, white's managed to defend f2 with a queen, which has freed the rook to get into play, and well, this rook is now threatening rook to e7, and f7 is in trouble. And again, you know, very important thing, and it's something that you know, that you've really got to bring into your end game calculation. It's something that I sometimes forgot actually in practical games, that you know, it's checks, disruptive moves like queen b7, for example. These are the lifeblood of defending endgames, because you know, you force a piece away from an ideal square, goes to h2, and then we play queen a7, and you know, that forcing away of the piece gives you an extra resource. You know, so it's not enough just to say, oh, should I try and attack f2? No, you know, make it ideal. Knock away a piece from an ideal outpost, and then, you know, carry out your threat. And yeah, I don't know, something that I often seem to forget sometimes when calculating endgames from afar. So king g1 to defend f2, and now very nice idea, rook a6, and again what you see is that you know, Stockfish has lined up the queen and rook on a file, and then once again, you know, using this combined power to knock away the white queen from f6. You know, instead of desperately trying to work out how to defend f7, you just knock away the attacking piece. Now, one interesting thing about this is that, especially now that the pawn situation on the queen side has been clarified, you know, white's only got 1 pawn on the queen side now. Yeah, it's actually possible for black now to really consider swapping off into rook endgames. This is a pretty typical oops, sorry, rook a7. This is a pretty typical rook endgame. You know, well known 3 and 3 on one side, 1 pawn pass pawn on the other side, and yeah, it's basically known to be a draw here. So after you go b4, I go king h6. This is very important. We're going to play f6 and g5, create some weaknesses on the king side, and then bring the king in. Comes from a very famous game, Portish Petrosian, where actually I seem to remember that after playing it perfectly for quite a while, Petrosian went off and lost it. But this plan was absolutely excellent. f6 g5, create some counterplay, you know, and well, something like rook a1, rook b3. This was the engine game. Rook b3, always nice. Stop the king from getting active in that way, and then we'll just play f6 and g5, and that'll be fine. So quite interesting moment there, that here with this queenside structure clarified, you know, no black pawn on a5 hanging around, just one passed isolated pawn for white on the queen side. We can really consider exchanging off queens there. So queen f3, rook b6, queen c3, rook d6, b4, queen d7. Yep. Again, once again, Stockfish has lined up and ready to keep on harassing the white queen, and yeah, it's happening. Queen f3, rook d3. And again, we've got the offer of the exchange of rooks here, and once again, Stockfish avoids it. So clearly, these queen ending, Stockfish is not a fan of them, and we'll have a little look at those afterwards. So King H2, King G7, Rook C3, and now Rook D4. Leading up to a very interesting plan from Stockfish. I also, had a check. Rook B1, Rook B3. Again, Stockfish does not want to exchange off rooks. Actually, he goes for Rook F1, trying to create some counterplay here, and still manages to make the draw, but not the exchange of rooks. So, clearly these queen and pawn endings with a passed queenside pawn, the engines consider those to be losing, and I'm pretty sure that they're correct. So Rook D4 played, Rook B3, and now an amazing defense. Rook D5 was a very sober defense, holding up the advance of the B pawn, and should be enough to draw. You can always keep on hitting the white queen as soon as it tries to advance the B pawn. You could even move the rook to B5, and blockade it that way. But actually, what Stockfish does is simply amazing, and well, I'm not sure it would occur to me in a game. If it did occur to me in a game, I would have said, come on, don't be stupid. Stockfish goes F5, and after B5 plays the move F4, and just actually trying to break open the king side here. And now the key point is that if B6, we go FG, Queen G3, and Rook G4. And we are simply going to take off the queen. If you go B7, I take on G3, and for example, if you go FG, well, I guess I do stuff like Queen D2 check, and you're not going to be able to avoid all of the checks there. Simply, black's just going to have a perpetual at least in those positions. So, the engines were trying to make something of it. We got, for example, Queen E5 check, King H7, Queen F6, and then Queen A4, and then we've got some threats brewing here. Rook H4 check. So one of the games played was Rook H3 to defend the H pawn, then Queen E4 threatening mate on G2, and the engines decided there that Queen F7 with draw by perpetual was fine. So what Leela did was play Rook B2, and this is quite clever. Takes, and you're saying, okay, well, this is pretty good. This pawn is advancing, and I've got this rook on the second rank, and we know that black didn't want to exchange off rooks, so yeah, it looks like black's in trouble. Now Rook D2 check. Now the rooks get exchanged, and this is something that that you're also going to see in the supplementary material that I'll put in the usual place. That's actually a series of these queen against queen and pawn endings with an extra pawn on the queen side that I got my engines to blunder check, and you're going to see some very interesting things with that. But in principle, a lot of these endings are drawn if the white king is reasonably open. It's just very, very difficult for white to advance the pawn if the king is open, because it's always open to perpetual checks. If we look though at a position like this, for example, where the white king is beautifully protected by a group of 3 pawns like this, and white is well placed actually to advance this pawn whilst defending the F2 pawn with the queen, then that's a completely different story. So the rooks, black is able to exchange off the rooks here because the white king has been opened with this maneuver F5, F4 takes G3. And the key idea here is this move Queen D4. I think this is probably a key position that you should probably try and stamp into your memory, because I could imagine this coming up an awful lot. The queen on D4, what does it do? It stops the queen from coming to B2 to support the B pawn. That's really important. It stops the advance of the B pawn, and it also keeps around the F2 square. So if the queen moves away, then the king is going to be a victim of perpetual check. And you just see what happens there. Queen check and Queen D4. Queen C2, Queen C7 check. yeah, I mean, if you go b6, then I go queen f2 check, and we've got perpetual again. So the queen has to come back, and then we give a check, and we come back. And well, basically, Leela didn't manage to escape this at all, and agreed to draw, you know, a few moves later. You know, I also, you know, had a quick check with the engines what happens after queen b6, but this is, you know, reasonably dangerous here in this position, because we've got the queen beautifully placed supporting the b pawn, and well, you know, the king can sort of try and come in and cause some danger. And actually, my engines were not managing to hold this as black. So, you know, obviously it's not a 100% clear thing that you know, all these positions with a white king open are going to be drawn. You need to restrict the opponent's queen as well, the activity of the opponent's queen. But yeah, to be honest, even this would certainly not have been easy for me to win with white. But that was a really interesting ending from black, and you know, in particular, I found this idea of lining up queen and rook, the queen behind, either protecting black's remaining queenside pawn or helping to stop the advance of white's passed pawn, and then this rook harassing the opponent's queen, just always disrupting the opponent's pieces. You know, I found that a very interesting way of playing. Now, yeah, one important thing. I mean, let's have a look, a little look at these endings. You know, so yeah, this ending here, instead of playing the move rook d2, which is what Stockfish played, could have played rook takes c1. But here the engines just thought that this was completely winning for white. And the key point about it, in actual fact, is that white is able to play the move queen a1 check, queen b2, and then just play a3 b4, and you're just going to create a passed pawn. And you know, these positions are just completely winning for white. You know, the king's nicely protected, and the queen can just both, you know, push the pawn and also defend the pawn on f2. There's plenty of examples like that in the supplementary material. So, you know, that seemed pretty clear. And then there was also a moment a little bit later on, where after rook e3, again, you know, Stockfish avoiding it, and it's the same story. Queen e3, queen c5. You see this very typical idea. We defend f2, and we've just got b5 to b6 here. So king g8, b5, queen a5, king g2, king g7. We give a check. We go b6. Just so hard for black to prevent this pawn from advancing, and you know, we get something like this, and then eventually black starts trying to create some counterplay. You know, otherwise the white queen's just going to creep in, and eject the black queen from b7, and well, this is just winning for white. You haven't got enough to create perpetual there. After queen f3, queen d7 was a very nice move, just covering g4 and d1 for checks, and just supporting the pawn on b7. So yeah, you know, I mean, I think we can be pretty clear that you know, these positions basically with you know, extra pawn on the queen side and the white king nicely safe, you know, with this f2 g3 h4 pawn structure, these are really good for white. The funny thing is actually is that you know, if you had the pawns on g2 and h3 and black's pawn on h4, then the engines are mostly saying that this is drawn, simply because white can't protect the king in the same way. The king inevitably gets opened, and black's able to give perpetual checks. So that's once again, have a look at the supplementary material. That's really interesting. So, you know, armed with all that knowledge, you know, basically I thought, well, I can't exchange off rooks. Once white creates this passed pawn on the queen side, a3, b4, you know, I might be able to exchange off queens, and otherwise, you know, line up the queen and rook like that, keep on harassing. I thought that I would, you know, play some games against Stockfish and Dragon, just give Stockfish and Dragon something like 30 seconds a move, and you know, and then just see whether I can hold it or not. And this was really interesting. So in the game the Dragon played against me, the Dragon played queen c3, attacking the pawn on a5. So I went queen d8. That's what I'd seen Stockfish do. And now the move rook e4 Stockfish, and also from Dragon. Sorry, was played. And I was sort of looking at it and thinking, well, I'm not really sure what can I do here. And I decided in the end, well, can I try and exchange off the rooks here and go into this rook ending? I wasn't 100% happy with it, and in actual fact, the engines say that this is actually losing. Why is this particular rook ending losing? The point is that you've still got this pawn on a5, and why it's still got the possibility of playing rook a4 to both defend the pawn on a2 and attack the pawn on a5. And it just means that black's always being tied down to the defense of that pawn. If these two have been exchanged with a3, b4, the black rook is really free. But if the pawn on a5 is still on the board, the black rook gets tied down to it. And well, this was what happened in my game, more or less. So king g2, rook f5, king f1, king g7, king e2, rook d5, king e3. I'm trying to sort of get my rook active, get into d2, but there's no way to do it at all. Rook d4, king d3, and now when everything's organized, actually the king's ready to come to the queen side, the rook is going to come to f4. If you don't know this technique of anchoring, take a look at the series that I did earlier, which is called Polishing the Classics. And I looked at a number of rook endings like this, where what does white do? White just anchors a rook on the king side, protects both the king side weak point and the queen side weak point, and the king is ready to come in for to support the pawn, and it works absolutely beautifully. Here, actually, another little beautiful little switch. The rook can come to d3 now. We've moved the weakest point of the kingside pawn structure, but it can still be defended just by the rook. And after check, king d5, we just end up giving up that b pawn, and then winning all of black's kingside pawns when the black king has been sort of lured over to the queen side. So not easy, these things, but yeah, most definitely winning. So this rook ending was not very good for me. What's always confusing, though, and you notice this with these endgames, is that you try and draw general rules really for yourself, and they do help, but a lot of it is kind of always quite specific somehow. Because one thing I was wondering about was, well, okay, what about rook c4 in this position? Not rook e4, which is what Dragon played, but rook c4, because rook c8 is happening. Isn't that going to force me to exchange off queens? Because, I mean, there's these threats of rook c8, queen h8 are really, really dangerous. I don't really know what I do about them. But here the engine said that I could play rook d3, because after rook c8, I can actually exchange off the queens like this. And I was thinking, why on earth is that? Because, rook a8, I'm attacking this pawn. Yeah, I mean, rook c5, the king comes in. This is pretty similar, or actually, this is pretty similar to what I thought was losing before. And well, rook c2, we go rook a5, rook f2. I mean, well, it's got these two passed pawns. But in actual fact, for the engines, this position is absolutely dead equal, 0.00. Which to be honest had not really occurred to me. What is the problem? Actually, the problem is the white king. If you go to h3, then, well, I do the standard rook b2, which makes it very hard to advance these pawns quickly. The only way I can do it is to go rook a4, b4 a3, then rook a5 back, and then b5 a4. It's a really slow process. And in the meantime, black's going f6, king h6, g5, and actually trying to mate this guy. So this is actually quite awkward for white. If you go to g1, I again go rook b2, and then I do the same thing. I just try and go g5, and the point of that one will be that I'll just be aiming to invade with my king and deliver mate as well. It's just in a way that white king is completely cut off from what's happening on the rest of the board, and black can really exploit that with activity, because advancing these two connected pawns from a2 b3 is an unbelievably painful process for white. The funny thing about it, and again, this is why you're always saying that you try and draw general rules for yourself, but it's there's always specific things. If this pawn on g3 was back on g2, white's +6. So, you know, with a pawn on g2, there's no worry about the king. The king is perfectly safe on the second rank. Black's got no rapid counterplay, and then we're just going to be able to advance all these pawns. That's not going to be a problem. Doesn't matter how long it takes. It's only the fact that the king either has to go to h3 into mating net possibilities, or to the back rank where it's tied down and the black king can try and invade. You know, that is that's the real difference. You know, it's really subtle. It's really subtle, and you know, just with something like I don't know, I guess a 5-minute think, or just thinking about the ending and all that. Certainly, those sort of subtleties just hadn't occurred to me at all. However, you know, after Queen d8, Rook e4, so you know, I sort of thought, well, you know. What should I do here as black then if my queen f6 move isn't any good? And you know, the engine said rook d3, and here I sort of, you know, I thought, yeah, but what is this actually? I mean, I rejected this explicitly on purpose because white has got this idea, rook e8 check, forcing the exchange of rooks. And now I've got this ending. You know, I've got this ending with queen and an extra pawn on the queen side. I mean, this queen's going to b2. We're going a3, b4, and I'm totally lost. I mean, you know, come on, engine. You know, what are you telling me? Well, the amazing thing about this position is that there's an absolutely brilliant defense, and you know, this is the thing that really thrilled me about this, and you know, it's the reason, I suppose, the biggest reason for making this video. Because it just yeah, you know, this is you're getting into stuff that just would never have occurred to me ever, the point is that black's got this brilliant defense, queen e7, and after queen d4 we play queen a3, and simply putting the queen on a3, it's prophylaxis against queen b2. We are stopping the white queen from getting to b2 and supporting the advance of the pawns. And actually, it's, you know, it's through normal means, it's more or less impossible to get the queen to b2 now, and to get the pawns running. And basically, you know, black's just waiting. Black's just leaving the pawn on a5, queen on a3, and just playing king h7 to g8. I can tell you, I have never remotely seen anything like this in endgame books, or indeed explained anywhere. You know, I really think, you know, I also think this is absolutely unique content what I'm showing you. Although I'm obviously happy to know if I've missed something somewhere in chess literature, but yeah, this is incredible. The funny thing is, you know, I would have left it there and just said brilliant, amazing, but then I looked at, you know, the rest of the engine game that was played with this, and I saw something rather interesting, because we got a lot of moves. And this is, you know, both dragon against stockfish, and stockfish against dragon. And by the way, I heard a rumor that development had been stopped on Komodo Dragon. If anyone knows, then I'd love to have that confirmed or denied, because I really like it. I really like it as an engine. I think it's really, you know, obviously it's not as strong as stockfish, but it's still really, you know, finds some very nice ideas, and it's one of my favourite engines for running engine matches with. So I really hope that's not true. But yeah, if anyone knows, then I'd be very grateful to know that. But yeah, so a lot of toing and froing, like engines do. They don't worry. There we are. It's only my electricity. They're not paying for it. So there we are. Lots of checks. Queen a3, queen d8, queen d2. We've gone nowhere, basically. But now the engine plays actually a very simple plan. This king's coming round all the way to b1, and you know, or around there. And we're going to try and play queen b2 and get the queen out. You know, extract the queen from a3. And well, you know, actually it works. There we are, king b2. So queen b5, queen e1. But what was really confusing me here was that, you know, the evaluations of the engine now were quite low, you know, whereas I was thinking, but you know, I mean, you know, actually the initial game was drawn in a few more moves, and I just thought, but a3, you know, what is this? You know, I'm just playing a3 and b4. Why on earth, you know, would this be drawn? And I was even more shocked when I just put it, you know, onto my engine, just running actively in the background, and it suggested queen c6, king b2, a4. And I just thought, what on earth is this? I mean, I understand that b4, queen c4 might be a little bit awkward. Actually, the engines think that this is just drawn in actual fact. You can't really, it's very hard for white to do anything. And if you go queen e8 check and take there, then we just check. And actually all these pawns on, the kingside pawns are quite, yeah, they're quite weak somehow. You can't stop checks without losing lots of pawns. And, well, I thought I'd trust the engine that this is actually going to turn out to be equal, although, I'd say it's tremendously scary to me, any sort of position like this. But, the thing that really shocked me was, b takes a4, queen a4. Hello, engine. Like we said that these positions with the queen and an extra queenside pawn were just winning. So, why wouldn't this position be winning? Why is this 0.2 or 0.3? You're not seriously saying that it's because the king's on b2 here that this position is drawn. Whereas positions with the king on h2, and again, have a look at the supplementary material for all that, are winning. Yes, it is. That is absolutely the point. With the king on b2, it gets impossible for white to advance this pawn, because actually, with the king being, in the open, the white position is very vulnerable to checks which are picking up the kingside pawns. For example, just give you a simple example, already queen b3, queen d4 check. There we are. It's just not actually possible for white to advance that a pawn without losing something along the way. And I played a lot of engine games with this, and it is absolutely true. But then I sort of thought, well, of course, but being a human player, strong in schematic thinking that these poor engines can't do. I mean, simply, I just put my king on h2, right? I mean, I don't care how many moves it takes. I'm just going to bring this guy over to h2, and I've got my winning position. There we are, silly engine. You haven't thought of that. And then all of a sudden, I finally understood. Because the moves that the engines were playing when they were playing out these endings were a little bit odd. They certainly weren't moves that I could really... I mean, they worked, and I sort of thought, well, fair enough. I guess they do work, but I didn't really understand. But the point is that the absolutely amazing thing is that you play this move, king c1, and the engine plays queen d7. What is the engine doing? As well as stopping a3 to a4, the engine is stopping your king from heading back to the queen side. And that is the absolute key thing that black has to do to maintain equality in this position. The white king has to be stopped from heading back to the king side, getting to h2. If that happens, it's +6, +7 for white. But if you can stop this, then you're going to draw. I mean, to be honest, this is absolute space age endgame technique. This, and had a look at just tried a few things there. King g8, queen e3, queen d5, keeping the barrier. A4 still is allowing queen a2 check. There we are. So tried all sorts of little things. For example, I had some playouts against Stockfish here. I could have gone king g8 again, but well, I just wanted to keep the game going because it looked like Stockfish was going to agree a draw by repetition. He doesn't know that I'm useless. Queen b1, queen c1. And now, the best way of playing was to go queen d3 check, king e1, queen check. You see what I'm doing. King f1 allows queen there. Queen e3, queen h1 check. King e2, queen d5. Still a4 will allow queen a2. And if you go queen d3, I go queen c6. What am I doing? I'm stopping a3, a4. I'm stopping the king getting to f3 by covering f3. And if you go king f1, in a flash, I will play queen h1 check and force you back. You are not getting back to the king side. I mean, that is absolutely amazing. Now, what I do have to say is that, you can know this as a human player, and now you do. And, I can't think that so many people know this if they haven't watched this video. But it's actually quite difficult to play with black. Certainly, I was getting, I was playing it quite well for a while, and then I was tending to get a little confused. But for example, I tried this move, queen a2, queen c5, queen b1, king d2, queen e4, and I sort of thought, well, this is quite a good one. I'm stopping a3 to a4, and I'm also stopping the king from getting across. But white played queen b4, queen d5, king e2. And suddenly life looked a little bit awkward, because the key way for white to make anything of this position is to get the queen to b4, which somehow I didn't manage to stop, because on the 4th rank, this queen is stopping any checks. I mean, you're still stopping the white king from getting back, so you're absolutely fine. That's no problem. But you don't actually have any active checks, and as soon as you start checking like queen e6, well, the king's safe, and you're completely lost. I let the engines try it out, and actually Dragon actually managed to lose this with black against Stockfish, so it's clearly not that easy. But it turned out that Leela managed to draw this with black, no problems, and Stockfish drew it with Leela as black. That's maybe slightly less impressive. It's always more impressive when somebody holds it against Stockfish. But it turned out actually that the weird thing about these positions is that the pawn can actually advance. Got a few repetitions there. A5. White's managed to advance the pawn from A3 to A5, but the engines still think this is a total draw. And it's just very hard to really be confident about this. Essentially, you just keep on giving checks. Not always, but you either give checks or you stop the pawn moving to A6. And you just try and harass the white king and essentially force the white queen to abandon protection of this pawn, and then you can take one, and then you can start checking again. That's the basic idea. But this is Leela black against Stockfish, doing a pretty good job actually of holding. And here Dragon went queen e2, and after king c5, then Stockfish managed to make it into a win here somehow. The king got through. That was the weird thing, and I'm not quite sure. I don't quite understand how that happened, but it did happen. And this sort of position is completely winning, because we've got the queen supporting the pawn, the queen defending f2, and the queen also able to give some cover to the white king. And this ended up as a win basically. Queen b2, queen f6, some subtle stuff, and there we are. We managed to win there. All very confusing. A8 queen, and there we are. What Leela did somehow was queen c6. It just stopped the king from advancing somehow, And in the end, Stockfish got tired of things and just gave up the f2 pawn for a tempo. But strangely enough, this is still drawing. Still, not the white pieces are not able to push that a pawn forward. Even though the position was agreed a draw in this position, I'd still be sweating profusely as black if I had to defend this one. So yeah, I mean, just in general, you mustn't underestimate the difficulty, of holding these as black. And I think, in a practical game, quick play finish wouldn't be easy. Although I think you'll see in the supplementary material that a number of people have held these endings as black. So presumably, the confusion factor for white of trying to avoid perpetual is also quite high. So it's sort of at least towards levels of a difficulty for black of keeping on finding the right perpetuals. But I do think it's an amazing theoretical conclusion, really, that that this type of ending with the white king on the queen side is a draw, but with the king on the king side, it's a win. It's would not have occurred to me remotely. Obviously I knew that I had a pretty good idea that with the king on the king side it's a win, but I would never have conceived that the king on the queen side would also not be a win for white. So there we are. I mean, I hope I've shown you some really cool stuff there in the ending. I do have to say, this is stuff that I hadn't really remotely occurred to me, an awful lot of it. I mean, I liked black's way of defending this with the queen and rooks on, just lining up the queen and rook, and as I said, going for harassment of the white queen and creating counterplay on the 7th and 8th ranks. That was really, really nice, and it was good to see that with all the pawns intact, with still a weakness for black on the a5 square, exchanging queens is really, really dodgy. And yeah, in principle, you know, these endings with queen, with the, you know, queen and pawn versus queen and pawn, but with, you know, one side having an extra pawn and able to create a pass pawn on the queen side, with the king safe, you know, those positions are winning for white. But, you know, a couple of random factors like an exposed white king, again, have a look at that supplementary material, or you know, the white king on the open on the queen side, and you know, not able to get back to safety on the king side, or, you know, black having the possibility to blockade these pawns in some creative way. You know, that's the sort of thing that's kind of tipping the balance to you know, turning in general what should be a winning endgame into a draw. And those sort of things are just, you know, incredibly subtle. And I think, you know, if you haven't seen them already in a game like this, you could never work them out in a practical game. I mean, it's really just unbelievable judgment. So there we are. Hope that was interesting, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as me. That's all I can say. If you like the video, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about the channel. Take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, also a Chessable course. And you know, otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.